And we are live with today's pre-show of our SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. Here we are in the pre-show. I've got plenty of questions for you today. Right now, we're spending the next 10 minutes getting everything set up, doing some double checks, making sure the streaming is working. And if you can hear this, then it must be. Now, if you're here on the replay, stick around, because in about 10 minutes, top of the hour, we will actually start this. This is the beginning part. We're not really doing anything yet. We're getting there. I'm sort of doing something. I'm trying to get something done. We'll make sure we can get to that point. All right, that looks good. This looks good. All my cameras are looking good. Like it. I like it. Hello, chat room. Hey, everybody. We are going to be checking in with everyone today. If you are here, we'd love for you to check in with us. Visit vevox.app. And you can bring up the ID of 146-042-530 or follow ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Oh, boy, we got a lot going on. Chat room is here. Thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for letting me know. There's folks here from all over the world, and you can put your own virtual pin in the map anyway, specifying where you are. I got folks in the chat room already mentioning from New Jersey and Arkansas and Austin, Texas. Denver, CO. That stands for Colorado. San Antonio's here. Hey, Chicago. South Africa. Big Mo's here. Colorado. DC is in the house. We got lots of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. Stafford, Virginia, nearby. Algeria. Saudi Arabia. California. Bhutan, we've got Mesa, Arizona, Nigeria, South Africa. Lots of folks. It's now going by so quick, I can't keep up. Try to say everyone's name like it's romper room. And I see Sunderland and Southern California and Zimbabwe and Charlotte, North Carolina. We're trying to make it happen, people. There's just so much of you, so many of you checking in. Thanks for being here. There's the Canadian folks. Thanks for being here. We love our Canadian watchers. I will let Mrs. Professor Messer know that you are here. It's important. She's the Canadian member of the group. So that is all good. We got folks checking in from all over the place, from London to Jersey, actually London to New Jersey, but Jersey's a different place. It sort of is. So that's the important part. There's downtown Houston, Texas. Hey, Jeff, good to see you again. Thanks for being here. Some folks checking in for Security Plus today. It's all Security Plus questions. Let's make sure we got everything we need. There's Alabama in Enterprise. Atlanta is here. It's almost same cadence, isn't it? Alabama and Atlanta, it's almost the same. There are slight differences, admittedly. Those of us in the South, we can pick up on that. A little bit of difference. Like, where are you folks from? Where are your folks from? We want to know. Where are your folks from? That's how we work here in the South. Want to know where your folks are from. Because maybe we know your folks, or maybe we know someone who knows your folks. That's kind of how it works. Thanks for being here, everyone. We will get started in about 6 minutes. Just 6 minutes, a few seconds. We'll get things going. We got a lot to go through today. Of course, all new questions from the 601 exam. We'll talk all about those. And we'll talk all about what's important about that exam as well. There's lots of changes going on. People have questions. We'll answer your questions today. How's your mom and them? That's right. See, Josh is from the South. That's how we do. How y'all doing out there? That's how we work. I throw the y'alls around when I head out to the West. I head out to California. I throw some y'alls around, and they look at me funny. So that's sort of how we roll here. Oh, I grew up in the deep South, in the Southy South, like in the we all talk like this kind of South, and we're fine with that. But that's how that works anyway. Need a Vevox app. There we go. 146-042-530. That number again, 146-042-530. Operators are standing by. There's no operators standing by. Nobody's standing by. You can sort of see the map over my shoulder, so I'm sort of keeping that up and running zooming into it because you can get a little more granularity out of where people are. Who is up in the northern parts of Canada? That's what I want to know. You are way up there. I don't even know what the towns are that far north. That's remarkable. Good for you. That's crazy. Okay, we will 5 minutes before we get started. Can we take exam 601 after 701 is launched? We will talk about that. We'll talk about when and how and all those things you can do with these different exams because it's a little bit crazy. It's a little bit chaotic when it gets down to taking those exams during the transition period. So we'll talk about that too. You can continue to take them until July. You can take 601 until July. So you got like a year till July goes away. Till 601 goes away. It's July 2024. Let's do a last check. We got recordings going. Those look good. We got video looks okay. Yep. We got live stream is looking just fine. And I think we're in good shape. We got 3 minutes before we get started. So we'll make it happen. Oof. There's a lot to go on. I think is it 177 videos for the current 601 version? I think it is. That's a lot. 601 is big. We'll talk about advantages and disadvantages of waiting and not waiting for these exams. This transition period always throws folks because you have to ask questions. Should I wait? Should I not wait? If I wait, what am I missing? If I don't wait, am I gaining anything? Those are fine questions. So we'll do that and work through the details. But I would suspect, I think the 701 exam is 121 videos. So already that gives you a little perspective on how different the 701 is going to be. Because the videos are about the same. I don't change the format. They're not modified. I didn't make a different configuration for this. I just kept doing exactly what I did for the 601. That's what I'm doing for the 701. And it's 121 videos. And we can talk about that in the after show. If you have specific questions about it, we can always go through it. I'll go through a little bit of a summary before we get really started into the questions today. But that's sort of how it goes with these transition periods. We have to make a decision about what's good and what's bad. And right now, if you're studying for 601, you're doing exactly the right thing. 701's not going to be here till November. You'll be certified by then. By the time a new one comes out, you're already 3 years certified. You don't have to worry about any changes to an exam, which is great. So that's sort of how it goes. Okay. Let's see if we can work through the details of this. What else we got going on here? There's a lot. I really mixed up all of the dates for next month, by the way. So if you were on a previous study group and I told you when the live events for next month are going to be, all wrong, all changed. Every single date is now different. So I apologize. I'm so sorry. That's sort of how it goes. Okay. That works for me. Oh, Jermaine, working on, what are you working towards? And having a business management background? Well, I have a degree in business management. So if I can do it, you can absolutely do it. They'll let me in the door with a business degree. It all works out. I think that's what's great about IT, quite honestly, is you can hop in there and just you're motivated, you can make it work. It really doesn't matter what your background is. You can figure this stuff out, and it pays really well. That's the key. All right. This is the key for me. For some people, it's not, but it is the key for me. We got less than a minute to go. We'll get this thing started. Work through all of the details. Oh, boy. I've got interesting questions today. So we're going to see how we do with these. I'm always sort of trying different things. I'm experimenting and trying to figure out the details, and there's always something interesting going on. So I'm going to get to that point in just a bit. Okay. And I think I've got the QA on for the questions and answers. I do. Folks are already putting questions in there. Thank you so much. You're already figuring all this stuff out. So that's working fine. Will it lose its traction? IT is not going to lose traction. It is remarkable. I think back to when the iPad came out. Everybody said, well, that's it for the A+. Nobody needs computers anymore. Oh, and here we are, everyone. Okay, it's time for live stream. Let's do this live stream right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SY0-601. That is our Security Plus study group for September of 2023. Welcome. I'm James Messer. I'm your host for this next hour of Q&A, where I will ask you questions that come directly from the Security Plus exam objectives. And you online, if you're here live, will be able to follow along with us and answer questions live, which is sort of the fun part of this, is being able to be a little more interactive. Now, if you'd like to participate, we would love to have you do that. If you're watching this on a replay, don't worry. You can still follow along with the rest of us, even though these won't be interactive. You'll still be able to take a guess and see what everybody else guessed. The way you would do that is to pop open a new browser window and browse over to professormesser.com/QA. There's also an app available. You can get it. It's called the Vevox app. Vevox is the service that we use for this. So go to the Vevox app, and it will ask you for a session ID. Today's session ID is 146042530. Don't worry too much about that. You'll see the session ID whenever I bring up the screens for the questions that we are working on. And the question I have for you today is this one, and it asks, a system administrator has determined that a spoofed email originated in another country. Which of the following most likely provided this information? Was it NetFlow, syslog, metadata, IPFix, or SFlow? Now, our standing rule for the study group is to please do not answer in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. We're all trying to figure out all of this together. And in reality, it doesn't really matter if you get it right or wrong. The important part is that you worked on it. So work through that particular question and pick the answer that you think that it is, and we will come back to this in just a moment. So you can work through, and we'll look at the answers too. If that looks familiar, by the way, it's a question from last month. It's our only rewind question. So this is the one about people in the chat room saying, wait, I've seen this before. You have seen this before. That's by design. I want to see if everybody can get in here and answer the questions and make sure that they're able to get into Vevox and able to move around and do the things they need to do. So this is the one. Also, I tried to pick a question last month that not a lot of people got right, or the smallest number of people got correct, because I want to see if we learned anything. So that might be interesting as well. We will come back to that question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. This is our September 2023 study group. I have, of course, one already scheduled for October. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But when we're not here doing a live stream, we have plenty going on. I certainly have a lot going on right now. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. And you'll probably, if you have not already, especially if you're here in their Security Plus study group, you will want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There is no question, because coming up soon, we will be doing a lot of YouTube posts, just a ton. I bet you can imagine, I bet you can think, I bet you can figure out what we will be posting on YouTube shortly over the next months or so. So you will want to be part of that. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, we're on my link still works over to what used to be called Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. One of these days, I will not update people in the chat room going, you need to update the icon. I'm not updating it. It's Twitter. I'm stuck now. That's what it's called. Until my brain makes the connection that it's called something else, then I will have to go in and change it. But until then, I'm just calling it Twitter, because that's what it is. It is in my mind. I know that's not what it is. I know there is a problem with my perception of reality. Don't worry, I'm aware of that. But in this particular case, that's the problem we run into. Also Instagram, which apparently still has the same name, I'm told. So go to professormesser.com/Instagram. You can see our weekly Security Plus pop quiz questions that pop up there. Always like to give you something. If you're coming to YouTube or you're heading over to Instagram or you're looking at Twitter, I like it to be a valuable thing. So I'm trying to post things that will help you to do this anyway. So you'll figure out the details. The current version of the Security Plus exam is called the SY0-601. There's plenty there. that you will be able to work through, because this exam has been out since November the 12th of 2020. It has been out for a number of years. This exam will still be around all the way until July 2024. So you've got a little bit less than a year, but about a year or so until that exam is retired. That's a lot of time, considering that on average, it's usually 2 to 3 months for folks to study and pass their Security Plus exam. That's a long time. So the takeaway from that is, if you are currently studying for your 601 exam, keep studying to take the 601 exam, because it's still going to be around until July. You just want to be sure that you finish your studies and you take the exam and you pass it before that retirement date. And as we get closer to that retirement date, CompTIA will provide us with a few more details, maybe the day in July. I think it's probably going to be the end of July, but we're going to find out. They haven't officially said yet. I see numbers on the inside of, they provide information to their partners, and I see the numbers that they're doing there, but I don't want to say anything until they say anything. It's a single exam, 90 minutes long. You might get a maximum of 90 questions. You could get fewer than 90 questions, and you need to earn a passing score of 750 on a scale from 100 to 900. It's an odd scale. It's an odd grading system, and they really don't explain how it's graded. They'll never tell us. So my recommendation to you is to really not worry too much about the scale and the passing score and how they grade anything, because ultimately you'll never know how they do it anyway. So none of us do. So don't worry too much about that. Just try to get a 750 or more, and you'll earn your Security Plus certification. There is, on the exam, a mixture of questions. There are multiple choice-based questions and performance-based questions, and we'll talk about both of those today. Now, one of the big questions I'm getting these days is because CompTIA has announced there's a new version of the Security Plus that will be released in November of this year. So as we sit here in September, we got October and finally November. So in about a month and a few weeks, we will be releasing a new version of the Security Plus exam. But as I mentioned, if you're already studying for the 601, don't stop studying. It's still going to be around until July. Just because they're releasing a new version doesn't mean the current version goes away. They always have an overlap period. So the retirement date for the 601 is still July of next year, I promise you. That's not a mistake. That's not a typo. That's legitimate. So you can keep studying and not have to worry about any changes going on. Now, the real question, of course, is, should you wait for this? We'll talk about that in a moment too. One of the things you'll notice, though, same format for the exam, same amount of time, same scoring system, same scale for the grading, same everything. Same, just it's almost a duplicate in the process and procedure. The real difference, of course, is that there are very different exam objectives. We can talk about that also as we get closer to the November date. Maybe next month we'll do a deep dive into the 701 just so you can see what's coming with that exam. So the question, of course, that people send me, should we wait? Should we wait and take the 701 when it's released in November? Well, my standing rule, and I think it's a good one, is never wait to earn your certification. That certification in your pocket is a valuable thing. So you want to take the exams that are available to you. And that's just a matter of you having it. I would hate for you to wait. Then you put in your resume and try to get a job, but the person you're fighting against for this job already has their Security Plus. So you're already at a disadvantage. Don't become someone who's now standing around because you didn't get certified. Also, there tends to be a limited number of study materials available on launch day. Now, there is, of course, behind the scenes, a lot of work that goes into creating the exam objectives. The objectives themselves have been available to publishers and partners like myself for a number of months. So we have been busy updating all of our study materials, but this takes time. I expect most of my materials will be available on day one when that new version is released, but that is not the case with every publisher. There are months of time that you might wait to get a 701 book from a publisher because that process just takes much longer. And we've seen this every time an update was made, is that the goal with all of these is that they try to get it out as quickly as possible, but it tends to be 3 to 6 months after release until we finally see the last few study materials make it to market. So there will be a delay, perhaps not from CompTIA, not from myself, but other publishers. It will take them time to create 701 content and get it out. And of course, the 601's around until July. So if you're waiting on a 601, that's the perfect exam to be studying for right now, because the 701 exam is not available. Study materials are not available. All we really know is that things will change in the future. But as far as today is concerned, we're exactly where we were yesterday. So the 601 is what's available. That's the one you should focus on. Chat room's even saying, so which one do I recommend doing first? There is no first and there is no second. You just pick one. Fortunately, you do not have to take both. That would be something. They're very different exams, as it turns out. So pick the one you're going to take. That's the one you should study from. That's the exam you should take. And if once you pass one of these exams, you're certified. So you don't have to kind of sit around after that point. If you waited until July and you took your 601 exam in July, you're still certified for 3 years. At that point, it doesn't matter what version of the exam is. You already passed the exam. You're certified. So that's the real question. So which one is easier? Well, we can talk about that in the after show. I have my own opinions of what is easier and what is not, and we can kind of talk about what those differences might be. Like anything else, there's advantages and disadvantages for everything. Don't forget on our website that our entire 601 course is available for you to watch for free. Every video is available on my YouTube channel. You don't need to register. It's not behind a paywall. There's nothing you have to do to be able to watch the videos on my site. I also have a number of additional study materials that might help you. My course notes, my practice exams, and downloadable versions of my videos, my audio files, and other information as well. It's all available in my success bundles. You can find out more about those on my website at professormesser.com/601SB. Also let you know that a video replay of this will be available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I also publish an audio podcast version of this, usually the next day or so, sometimes the same day, but within 24 hours, you will see a podcast posted that is audio only. So if you have a podcast listening program you like to use, go to professormesser.com/podcast. And you can put the links in and add that to your podcast listening group. If you're already on a popular podcast listening platform that has their own index, we're probably in there. If you listen on Spotify, podcast is on Spotify. So pick your favorite thing, and you can work through those as well. There's a lot to go through there. I mentioned there's a video replay on YouTube immediately afterwards. And if you wait about a day, my marketing manager, Lori, will go through the entire video. She watches the whole thing again. Hey, Lori. She's listening right now, not live, but on the replay. And she's watching the chat as it goes by. She's probably watching this at 2x speed. And she puts timestamps in for every live stream we do, which is incredibly useful if you're trying to find that one thing. Maybe it was a question in the after show. Maybe it was a question during the beginning of the show. Well, you have a link right to the timestamp. It's in the YouTube video description. I find that it's incredibly useful. And thank you, Lori, for doing a great job with these again. And if chat room, if you like what Lori's doing, give her a hello and a thanks too, because that is a difficult thing to have to watch me for 2 hours. So she should get some type of extra pay, maybe. I'm not sure. We'll have to talk about that. When we are not here, we are, of course, on our Discord. That is our live chat and study resource. We have a fantastic community there of lots of folks. You can go to professormesser.com/Discord to sign up, or follow the Discord icon that's at the upper right on my website at professormesser.com. And of course, eventually you are going to need to take this exam. If you are in the US or Canada, it will be great if you came to my website to get your voucher, not only because it helps us keep the lights on here, but it's actually discounted. So you could pay full price on the CompTIA website, but why would you do that? Instead, head over to professormesser.com/vouchers. You can purchase a voucher there if you're in the US, Canada, or a number of US territories. And that's a great place to go to get that discounted voucher. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need a special link. You just go purchase it. It's just already discounted the way it should be. And of course, I give you a little bit more than just a voucher. If you purchase from my site, you will get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a list of exam hacks, life hacks that I put together based on the large number of exams that I've taken in this industry. I guess I've taken about 20 different, maybe 25 different certification exams. So that's one of the things that's pretty useful, is being able to know exactly where to get this information, these tips from, well, I've just put them all in one book. So the book is my Exam Hacks ebook. You can't buy it on my website. It's only available when you purchase a voucher or you purchase my Success Bundles. That's the only place you can get it. So a little exclusive, little bit of exclusivity there for you. So something that might help you. Let's talk about that question we did earlier. We have this question. A system administrator has determined that a spoofed email originated in another country. Which of the following most likely provided this information? And let's see how you answered this one from the possible answers of NetFlow, syslog, metadata, IPFix, and SFlow. And we can see that the people who answered, 57% of you chose metadata, 21% said syslog, 11% said NetFlow, 7% said IPFix, and only 2% said SFlow. So the real question, whenever we get to questions like this, is understanding where you would even get that information from. How would you even know that the email was spoofed? And then how would you know that it came from another country? Well, you would simply look at the metadata. The metadata is there to provide you with information about the document. And if you've never looked at the metadata, there's tons of information in there that you could pull from. If it's an email, you can look at the raw header or the complete email itself, and you'll see a large header section there that tells you about what email servers were in the path of this conversation, what the destination address was, where this was sourced from. There's a lot to look at there. So you have a lot of things you can pull from. Metadata and an email can be very, very valuable to figure out what's there and what the information is. Of course, you have other types of metadata depending on the systems you're running. Mobile, web, there's metadata in the files you're using. If you were to look at an email and look at the headers, you would see it looking something like this. So there's a lot going on here. This is one that has all kinds of keys inside of it. Maybe that's a public key. You've got information about authentication results, where this originated from. There's the IP address it originated from. You've got a lot of detail in here. So that's where we get the answer to this question. It's the metadata, of course. That's where we would pull this data from. Now, we have 21% said syslog. Looking at a spoofed email, that doesn't create a syslog event. That's not a log entry. So it would not be a syslog option. NetFlow and SFlow are relatively similar in what they provide from a perspective, or how they provide the data, which is looking at the data go by. And the SFlow and NetFlow data provides great information about how your network is running, what applications may be in use, what type of protocols are traversing your network, but it doesn't tell you anything about what's inside of a spoofed email, unfortunately. And so that's the last option, IPFix. Very useful for performance testing and performance validation on networks. But IPFix data is about performance and not about understanding details about a spoofed email. So the only option here, although I said most likely, really the only option that would be applicable here would really be the metadata. And 57% of you thought, yeah, that's about right. That's what I would think as well. Well done with that. That is the correct answer. You were able to either remember what we did wrong last month, or you already knew this information anyway. So you did a great job with our rewind question. Now let's give you something new. We got plenty of new questions now going forward. And this first new question is not a multiple choice question. This first question going forward is a performance-based question. When many of you may not even realize, if you haven't taken the exam before, is that the first handful of questions you get on the exam will not be multiple choice. They will be questions that are just anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be questions asking about drag and drop. Then you may have to put things in a particular order. Maybe it's a matching question. There's a lot of different types of questions that could be asked. But the thing to keep in mind is the questions, or the topics in these questions, are topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So you already know the answer. They're just going to ask you in a form that's a little bit different than a multiple choice question. So let's do this performance-based question of the month. This is a matching question, and this matching question asks, match the device to the description. Match the device to the description. So I have 4 devices on the screen. Those 4 devices are jump server, HSM, collector, and IPS. Those are the 4 devices. but I have 7 descriptions, which means there will be, I'm doing the math here, 3 left over at the end that we did not match. So for extra credit, I'll even give you a little bit of extra credit, which the points don't really matter, so, but I'll give it to you anyway. If you can tell me what device matches the 3 that are left over, I think that would be pretty good. So for those of you listening on the podcast side, let's step through each of these device descriptions. They are A, backup and manage certificates for all company web servers. B is block known vulnerabilities in network traffic flows. C is forward traffic based on destination IP address. D is block any network traffic containing private information. E is perform web server requests on behalf of a client. F is gather statistics for long-term network monitoring. And G is access a protected network from an external connection. And you will want to match to those one of those 4 devices: jump server, HSM, collector, or IPS, and there will be 3 left over at the end that we did not match, that you will be able to tell me what you would match with it if there was a match. I guess that's what we want to be able to provide. Match that device to the description. This is not an unusual format, by the way, where things are left over at the end, because if it was 4 devices and 4 descriptions, you could kind of piece together what you did know with what you didn't know, and whatever was left over would just fit, and that's just a gimme. And CompTIA doesn't give you any gimmies, not on the exam. On the exam, they will give you questions like this where you could get all 4 of these completely wrong. And just because there's 7 different options to choose from. So this is not uncommon to be able to break this down this way. It's a very common type of question to see. So make sure you're familiar with those. So if you know the answers, I know it's sort of an open text option to put this in. If you think the answers are already in order, simply put in there 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. That's it. I'm not really going to be looking through and grading each individual question because it is that text-based format, but I wanted you to have a place where you could plug in the answer, if only to document what you think it is in your mind and be able to have that there. I think that will be an important part of your studies. So as always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We instead want to put the answers in right there at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer and see what it happens to be. I see a number of you starting to put answers in. So already you're sort of going through the list, figuring out the details. Notice these questions take a little bit more time than a multiple choice question. And that is, of course, by design. That's how this works. And you will get probably a handful of these at the beginning of the exam. You might get questions at the beginning of the exam. There might be 4 or 5, sometimes 6 performance-based questions on here. So you really want to watch your clock, because you might get into a question like this and you'll spend 10 minutes trying to map things together. And by the time you're done, you're down 10 minutes and you still have the rest of the exam to do. So I often tell people, read through the performance-based questions, but you might want to consider just skipping them at the beginning, going straight to the multiple choice, go all the way through the multiple choice, and then you can come back on the exam through the first one. So you've got some options there to pull from. That might help you. So let's see how you did. A number of you are still getting these answers in. I want the last few of you to plug in what you think the answer is, because we are about to reveal what we believe the answer happens to be. Quickly, as a follow-up, some folks in the chat room were saying, oh, well, if you can go back, can you change the answers when you go back? Absolutely. You can change every answer on the exam until you hit the final submit button that says you are finished with the exam. So that's one of those where you have to, don't double think yourself. Don't answer like, oh, I know the answer. I'm gonna plug it in. And then you come back and think, do I really know the answer? I think you knew it when you did it the first time. I tend to not change them once I put them in, unless I clicked the wrong thing or I misread the question. There's been many times where I've read a question and there was a not, N-O-T, in the question that changed the answer completely, except I didn't read the not, and I just answered what I thought the yes would be. So that can be a problem. That's a little bit of a challenge. So let's have a look at what we think the answers are on this one. We'll start with the very first one, a jump server. It has nothing to do with airplanes or parachutes. A jump server is used to access a protected network, generally from an external connection or an untrusted connection. So you would jump into the jump server, and from the jump server, you can jump to any of the devices that are inside the network. Think of it as a very clunky kind of proxy. It's not really a proxy, but it is just a way to get access to a central server, which then has better access to the devices that are on the inside. We can provide a lot of security for that one device. We can harden the jump server. We can provide additional authentication to the jump server, different factors to the jump server. And once we have the jump server info, and we're on that machine, then we can jump to the other devices. But we know that we're putting all of our security right there on that jump server, which is great. It's another good way to do it. Let's do another one. HSM. HSM, for my friends in the UK. The answer there would be A, backup and managed certificates for all company web servers. And HSM is a perfect use for this. The hardware security modules are often an appliance that is sitting in a data center, and it is managing all of the certificates and, in many cases, private keys for all of your servers, especially web servers. You imagine having 1,000 web servers. That can be incredibly difficult to manage, all of those different certificates that are on every single one of those servers. So instead, you put them on the HSM, a secure device, a device that is designed to maintain these certificates. And as the servers are booted, they can access the certificates through a secure API. And if you ever need to update the certificates, you go to one place and you know everything is there. Great way to do it. So hopefully that can help as well. We've got a collector. A collector would match best with answer F, gather statistics for long-term network monitoring. So if you have a NetFlow, SFlow, or similar flow-based analysis that you like to perform on your network, you will need something that does the collection of the data. Usually this is a collector that is watching live traffic go by, and it is building metadata based on that traffic. So you can ask the collector, how many devices on the network are communicating using Microsoft SQL Server? And it will give you a chart showing you how much traffic in Microsoft SQL Server has been on the network and who's been communicating with that. So it doesn't show you the raw packets generally, but it does show you a summary of what it found when it watched the raw packets go by, which is the definition of metadata in that particular case. That is the point of a collector. Sometimes that collection function is built into a server or device, maybe integrated into a firewall or some other device. Sometimes it's a standalone appliance. That's all it does is collect data. So the collectors are perfect for gathering those stats for the long-term network monitoring. And the last one on our list was IPS. IPS. And that, of course, is an intrusion prevention system, and that matches best with answer B, block known vulnerabilities in network traffic flows. And that's exactly what an IPS does. It looks at live traffic going by, and if it recognizes a known vulnerability within that traffic flow, it will block that traffic if you tell it to. If you say, yes, if you ever see that, block it, and it will block it for you. So great functionality. Usually that's these days built into your next generation firewalls. It's kind of hard to find a standalone IPS anymore. We generally don't use standalone IPSs. It's not something we do. We just integrate it into our very high speed and functional next generation firewalls. So that means there were 3 that we did not choose. We did not choose C, forward traffic based on destination IP address. We did not choose D, block any network traffic containing private information. And we did not choose E, perform web server requests on behalf of a client. So now our multiple choice. What would we say forwards traffic based on a destination IP address? Well, that is quite literally the definition of a router. A router looks at inbound traffic. It examines the destination IP address based on that inbound traffic and then sends it out an interface that matches the routing table within that device for the destination of that very same traffic. So this is a great way to get information moved around. So at home, of course, and in all of your offices, you have many routers that are installed and communicating. So the router is a perfect thing to use for forwarding traffic based on a destination IP. Next on our list, block any network traffic containing private information. Well, that is perfect for a DLP, a data loss prevention solution. DLP functionality can be found in many next-generation firewalls. There are also standalone DLP solutions for appliances on your network and software-based DLP that can run on an individual client workstation. So that is a very useful way to find sensitive information. If you're trying to block credit card details, if you're trying to block social security numbers or anything else that you can programmatically identify, a DLP is a perfect solution for that. And next on our list, the last one is perform web server requests on behalf of a client. And if you've ever had to deal with one of these, then you have my condolences. That would be a forward proxy. A forward proxy is specifically designed to block direct communication between your users and the websites that they're trying to communicate with. Instead, we have a device in the middle that does the request for you. It is, by the definition of the name, a proxy that sits in the middle and makes all of those requests. And then it receives the answer, examines the answer, makes sure there's nothing malicious in that answer, and it sends the answer down to the user. So that's what we would use with a proxy. And I would just accept generic proxy on that one as well. I'm being a little fancy by telling you the type of proxy, but when someone says proxy, we pretty much know what they mean given the context. There's many different kinds of proxies. So the answer here, number one, jump server, was G, access a protected network from an external connection. HSM is backup and manage certificates for all company web servers. A collector gathers statistics for long-term network monitoring. An IPS blocks known vulnerabilities and network traffic flows. A router forwards traffic based on a destination IP address. A DLP blocks any network traffic containing private information. And forward proxy performs web server requests on behalf of a client. So if you got 4 out of 4, you did great. If you got 7 out of 7, you did phenomenal. You did really great with understanding what the differences are with these devices. There's a whole section in the exam objectives about devices and when you would use them. And so that's probably the part that's the most important, is CompTIA will not ask you, what do the letters DLP stand for? And you have to somehow remember that means data loss prevention. They will never ask that. They will always ask you a question about, what would you do with a DLP? How would you use this DLP? And naturally just assume that you know what the abbreviation DLP means. So all of the questions in CompTIA always step a couple times through. There's a couple steps to get to the final answer. It's very common anyway to see that. So if you answered that one, that was indeed our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were familiar with some of those devices. And if not, make a note of the device name, and then you can figure out more about what these devices do and where you would put them on the network. Let's now shift gears back to multiple choice questions. So I have one for you, all brand new questions, something that has been written specifically for this study group. Our next question on the list asks, which of the following would best describe the amount of time required to fix an issue during an outage? Is that RTO, MTTR, EULA, MTBF, or RPO? Wasn't I just talking about abbreviations? I think I was. This is not unusual for this exam. Of course, do not answer this question in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there, please. Or follow the links on your screen for Vevox. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe the time required to fix an issue during an outage? Is that RTO, MTTR, EULA, MTBF, or RPO? What would it be? We'll have to find out. See if you know what the answer is. Go to professormesser.com/QA or follow the links on your screen for Vevox to be able to know exactly what the differences are between all of these. Maybe you do know what these are. See if you're familiar with them. So we'll have to see if you know what. Of course, it helps to know what all of these are, because all of these are directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Someone asked earlier in the chat room, is this even in the objectives? Oh, yes. Unless I say otherwise, everything and every question comes from the exam objectives, because I feel like that's how we learn something. If I just make up every answer except the right one, first the right one is obvious, and then you don't learn anything. So we'll figure out the details. Yes, I am definitely I saw you talking in the chat earlier about this question. So while we were working, I behind the scenes with my other set of arms typed in this question for you. Not really. You're just really good at this and figuring out the details. Maybe that can help you too. So that's really the key, is knowing what's in the exam objectives and breaking down where the other answers might be for all of these questions. If you know the answer, lock it in right now. Vevox.app, there's the ID, or go to professormesser.com/QA. Let's do some more. We've got, let's figure out the answer here and see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe the time required to fix an issue during an outage? Is that RTO, MTTR, EULA, MTBF, or RPO? Let's close the poll and see how you did. We can see that 57% of you say the answer is MTTR. 33% say it's RTO. We have single digits from there. MTBF is 4.78%. RPO is 3%. EULA is 1%. Having that hundredths in the percentage is so important, isn't it? So we have to do, if we work through the details of this, breaking down what all of these happen to be. We'll have to figure out what it is. But MTTR seems to be certainly the majority of what people chose. We need to figure out the time required to fix an issue when there is an outage. So let's kind of break down what these things are and how they are from a recovery perspective indeed used. RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. That means that to say that you have recovered means that you need something that can tell you you got to a particular service level, therefore you're recovered. And maybe this is one where you can get up and running everything 100% very quickly and get back to this particular service level. We refer to that as a recovery time objective. That objective is the service level that we're working on. We want to know, as soon as you get half of the data restored, that's our objective. That's your RTO. Next on our list is we have this recovery point objective, or RPO, which means how much data loss would be acceptable here. A recovery point objective. This is really dealing more with data and how much data we need to bring into the mix and figure out the details of the recovery point objective. So if we bring the system back on, how far back does that data go? Does it go back a week? Does it go back a month? Does it go back a year? We have to figure that out. We need a recovery point objective to figure out what point the data is available and work through that. And then we have a mean time to repair, the time required to fix an issue. This is probably the number that your boss is asking about. When they're standing over you, when there's an outage, you can feel them breathing on your neck, where they're wondering, how long is this going to take? How long is it going to be before the system's back up? People are calling me. I need to answer these questions. What am I going to tell them? Get a grip, man. You need to go and you need to go somewhere else and ask those questions, I guess. Most good managers will not bother you during that very sensitive time. They know you're working and they're not going to be on top of you. Just that one boss that I'm thinking about. You know who you are. I know, I see you. But I don't have to worry about that now. And I can just tell them, oh, it'll be back within the MTTR. That would be our mean time to repair. That's the average time it would take to fix this particular issue. You've also got, how long is it going to be before this breaks again? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I have a number for that, the MTBF, the mean time between failures, where I can predict how much time it will be before we have another outage, which hopefully will be a very long time to be able to do that. MTTR is the mean time to repair. That would be the average time it takes to fix a problem when there is an outage. And MTTR is usually something that you're figuring out on your own. Maybe there's a contractual thing about MTTR. Maybe you've got a plan with a third party that if we ever have an outage, we call them and they have to be on site in 2 hours with equipment to swap out, and we're back up and running in 3 hours contractually. There's your number. Your MTTR is 3 hours. That's a very easy example. It's not always easy to predict how quickly you can get back up and running again. But you have to think about, how would you get back up and running if that system suddenly caught on fire? If the power supply blew right now, how long would it be? Do we have an extra system in the back? That's another thing people will do, is when they buy one device, they'll actually buy a second one. And sometimes they can buy the second one at a discount because they're not using it. It's powered off in the back room. And they just have it sitting there. And then when you need it, you can pull it out, put it in the rack, turn it on, apply the license, put the configuration on, and you're back up and running. So there's a little bit more involved with something like that, but you may be able to do it faster because you have equipment on site. So your MTTR could be a lot less if you did it yourself. So there you go. There's a few options there. And that's just the network equipment. What if you have to restore from tape? What if you have to pull everything down from the cloud? But there you go. That goes into your calculation of an MTTR. All of these numbers are important to know. All of them are useful for understanding topics that come directly from the exam objectives. But for this question that asks to best describe the time required to fix an issue during an outage, the answer is by far the MTTR. The ones we didn't talk about here were the EULA. It's the only thing we didn't talk about. The end user license agreement is what a EULA is. This is the thing that you never read when you install software. It just says at the bottom, click here if you agree, and then click continue. That's the EULA. You may have never seen it before, or at least you don't recall. And if you scroll down, maybe they make you scroll all the way down, which I don't know why they do that, because you know what we do? We just scroll all the way down and click OK. We aren't reading it. Why do you think that scrolling down somehow means that I have read it better? Well, the lawyers think it does. They think that helps, but they're not right, because we don't. We just scroll down and click yes. So that's why the EULAs are important. They do contain important legal information about how you're able to use this software. We probably should read it. We probably should pay more attention to our EULA. But in this particular case, it is not the answer we were looking for. It has nothing to do with fixing an issue during an outage. So that would not be the right answer. The right one indeed is MTTR, and 57% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another one. Here's the next question on our list is, which of the following would be the best way to transfer data to a SIM? Would that, well, that's not going to help you. I need to give you this that might help you. Is the answer IPsec, syslog, HTTPS, SSH, or SFTP? All of these things you should know. These are all real things from the exam objectives again. So the questions again, which of the following would be the best way to transfer data to a SIM? Would it be IPsec, syslog, HTTPS, SSH, or SFTP? That's what you want to answer. See if you know the answer. You can go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer, or certainly you can go to the Vevox app details that are also on your screen. Maybe you know some of these, and of course there's more abbreviations here. Sorry about that, but that's the nature of IT. Security Plus certainly has a lot of abbreviations. I'm trying to figure out which has more. I think Network Plus has got to have more, don't you think? Network Plus has a lot of abbreviations. A Plus can't have this many. One of these days I'll count them all up. We'll have to do that and see which one of these has the most number of abbreviations that I need to know. Fortunately, you tend to learn these acronyms as you go through the study materials. So that might help you as well. This is always an important one to know about. We'll have to figure out what the differences are and what they happen to be. A lot of confusion in the chat room over this question, and I do not know why, because there's a very obvious correct answer with this one. So let's see if you know what the very obvious correct answer might be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asked, which of the following would be the best way to transfer data to a SIM? Is it IPsec, syslog, HTTPS, SSH, or SFTP? Well, we got a few different options to choose from. Let's see how you answered. And if we look at the poll, we can see that 43% of you say syslog, 32% of you say SFTP, 11% SSH, and then single digits, 8% for IPsec and 4% for HTTPS. So the real question here is understanding what we're working with. And in this case, we're working with a SIM, an SIEM. So the important part when working with a SIM is understanding what type of data a SIM might use. And a SIM very commonly uses syslog data. Syslog is a standard for sending log information from one device into a log collection entity. That's a very generic term for a syslog service running on a device. So a syslog agent sends information to a syslog service. And commonly, this syslog service is going to run on a log collection device. We're going to send a bunch of logs into a database. So we can transfer the logs across the network. Then once they get to the server, what happens? This is a good question. So we get all the way across the network, but then we just sent the data. Now what happens to the data? Well, it has to be parsed. It has to be understood. It has to be a very common, a way to break apart. And so you have to know the log format, and then it's usually put into a database. And that is very, very common to see on a SIM. I mean, that's what a SIM does. It receives information sent across the network via the syslog protocol, the syslog standard. That information is transferred over. It is parsed out of that syslog format, put into a database, and then runs on a security information and event manager, a SIM. That is, sometimes you'll see it written as SEM, the security event manager. Both of those are perfectly valid to have that there. So maybe that gives you a perspective anyway of where you might see syslog data being used. In fact, that's very common. In fact, that's very rare to see be unusual to see syslog data sent to a device other than a SIM. So that's the real important part. Syslog does transfer data, I assure you. The syslog format applies not only to the process of sending it, but to the protocol used during the process. Similar to like SNMP, for example. SNMP is a protocol. It's also an agent. It's also a server, but it's also the protocol on the network. Same thing with syslog. Same idea. So the real key with this, you're going to be using a lot of drive space for this one. So hopefully that gives you a perspective of where you would pull these from. I'm not sure why there's a lot of confusion about this one. The chat room's kind of worried about the terminology used with this, but this is spot on in working with this. Which of the following would be the best way to transfer data to a SIM? Well, it's a syslog. That's how you would transfer data to a SIM. You would tell your router, I need to send these logs to a third-party log collection tool, like a SIM. Please send it via syslog to this device. You put in a fully qualified domain name or an IP address. That's what you configure in your router. That's what you configure in your firewall. That's what you configure in all those places. So that's why we asked about this. That would be the best way to transfer data to a SIM. And I think a number of people maybe have never worked with a SIM before and syslog. And if you haven't, maybe that's a good thing to check out. Go look at how you could send data from Windows via syslog. Go look at how you could send data from a Cisco router via syslog, from a switch via syslog. So there you go. So that's exactly how it would work. Don't be too confused about turning it on and letting it run. That's what syslog is for. That's why we work through that. I do not mean sysmon. I mean syslog. Syslog is an agent. Syslog is a client. Syslog is also a protocol. So those are the keys about syslog. And if you get into security, you're going to use syslog a lot. So you should already be familiar with syslog and logging and a SIM and transferring data, and always the case. So hopefully that's something that you are familiar with. And another good one, trust me, this is probably something we should do a lot more of. I think there's not enough companies putting an emphasis in reporting and storing of this data. I think there's been a new generation of folks who realize, no, we really do need to put that in there. So that's the important part of this. So hopefully you got that one right. 43% of us, not quite a majority, but 43% was the plurality of you that got it right. So syslog, absolutely the correct answer on this one. Really no question. 32% said SFTP. And if we were transferring data to a web server, or maybe if we were transferring data to a file transfer agent, I would go along with that. I would say SFTP. But a SIM doesn't have to be running an FTP agent. It doesn't have to be running an FTP service. So It may not even be running an FTP service. It may not even be running SSH for secure shell. We have to look at what the SIM does. And if it's a SIM, you should automatically be thinking syslog. It should automatically in your mind say, oh, it's a SIM, we're doing syslog. There's a ton of syslog. In fact, by far, more than any other, it's going to do syslog. Now, how do you know that it's syslog and not SFTP, though? Well, go look at the router or the firewall or the device that is sending the data, and it says syslog configuration. What device should we send this data, send our log files via syslog? Oh, you need to send it to sim.example.org or the IP address of that device. So that's the important part. It doesn't say, where should we send this data via SFTP? Because it's not sending the data that way. If we're transferring log file information, it's syslog. That's what we use in the industry. It's a very standard way to send this data, and you see it all the time. And by far, if you look at the data inbound to a SIM, the most amount of data that SIM will see by far will be syslog data. That's an important part of it too. So hopefully you're familiar with syslog. If you haven't, go look at the configuration of a next-gen firewall or a switch or a router. You will absolutely see the syslog piece in there. This was a cornerstone of the technologies I used to work with as a systems engineer. I did tons of network analysis, network management, reporting, SIM, and then extended that out when I started working with next-gen firewalls. So an incredibly valuable tool that I think we just don't use enough of is syslog. So the more you know about SIMs, I think the more valuable you will be as a technologist. What other answers did we have here? We did not answer. HTTPS, which is used to encrypt data to a web server. That's not a web server. That's a SIM. So that would not be what we were looking for, at least not getting data to a SIM. That's not what we were looking for. And IPsec is commonly used for VPNs, especially site-to-site VPNs. So syslog or a SIM is not a VPN concentrator, and it doesn't need to necessarily communicate over a VPN. So IPsec would not be our best way. In fact, IPsec's not a transfer protocol, so that wouldn't be used either. Best answer here, syslog. Notice it's a two-step process. Again, with the two-step process, this is very common on the exam. You have to know what a SIM does so that you understand what data is being transferred, so that you understand, oh, that's log data, and if I'm transferring log data, it's syslog. It's really about a three-step process, isn't it? So about a three-step process to get there. Not uncommon for the CompTIA exams. Hopefully that's given you some perspective of what you can find on the Security Plus exam. It is a lot of data across a lot of different types of topics. Everything from designing networks to cloud computing to securing and understanding different attack types, mobile security, risk management, and everything in between, it seems. Well, there's a lot to learn on the Security Plus exam. And I realize when we look at all of my videos, it's 177 videos on my Security Plus exam video course, and you have access to all 177 of them. But gosh, that's a lot of data to have to pour through. One of the things I often tell people is, why don't you just have a look at my notes? I've taken everything from every video and put them in the notes. So we can absolutely go through and learn everything from every video there. That kind of helps. If you're trying to find information that is specific to the exam, it's all in here. There are both digital versions like the PDF you just saw on your screen, or digital versions, which are the physical representation of that. And if you purchase the physical book version, which is perfect bound, very nice and high quality paper and in color, that is available on my site as well. And if you get the physical version, you get the digital version for free. Find out more about that on my website, professormesser.com/601cn. Well, we got more questions. No, don't worry. We got plenty more questions to go through. Here's another one on our list. This question asks, which of the following would be the best way to direct individuals through a specific area? Would that be motion detection, CCTV, bollard, protected distribution, or industrial camouflage? This is a good question. Which of the following would be the best way to direct individuals through a specific area? Would it be motion detection, CCTV, bollard, protected distribution, or industrial camouflage? All real things, all from your exam objectives. See if you're familiar with what this answer might be. If you'd like to answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put answers in the chat room. Please do not put hints in the chat room. We'll have to figure out what this answer might be for this one. Hopefully you'll figure out these details. Maybe you've even used one of these before. Maybe you've used all of these before, and you'll be able to work through these. See if you know this answer. We have a number of you locking in your answers right now. Again, visit the Vevox.app that's on your screen, or go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know what these happen to be. This would be a good one too. How can we make something like this happen? It would be a good question. Yeah, maybe everything should be a moving floor. Maybe that's what we should do. Is now you have no choice but to just stand there and let the floor take you wherever it's going. That would be a good way to do it. That doesn't even work that very well in airports. It helps a little bit. It tends to be more of a problem, it seems. Why don't we just walk? I think that might be easier for all of us. Maybe not all of us, but most of us. I think most of the time I'm happier not getting on the little moving walkway. I'm happier walking next to it. Just too much to work on that. Yeah, every single one of these is in the exam objectives. So if you see one of these answers and you're thinking, I don't know about that question, I don't know about that answer, I don't recognize it, make a note, because you need to go back to your exam objectives and have a look, because everything in there is from the exam objectives. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, which of the following would be the best way to direct individuals through a specific area? Would that be motion detection, CCTV, bollard, protected distribution, or industrial camouflage? It's got to be one of these. Let's see what you answered. Close the poll up, and the answers are 63% of you say the answer is a bollard. We also have 16% that say it's protected distribution. And then it's all single digits from that point. 9% for motion detection, 7% for CCTV, and 3% for industrial camouflage. All of these, again, are real things, but when 63% of you answer the question, then we sort of know the answer is a bollard, or a barricade, if you will, depending on how you like to say it or where you're from in the world. These are designed to prevent things like cars and people from going into a particular area. Usually they are a little bit obvious, like the ones you see here. They're in red and white stripes. You can easily see it's there. Sometimes the bollards are built into the architecture of the place. If you go into the front of a very popular superstore here in the United States that has kind of a bullseye on it, out in front they have these big red balls that are enormous. You know, the kids can climb all over them. You can lean against them, but they're more than just decoration. They keep someone from driving into the front of the store. They are effectively a bollard, and that's a good way to direct people through or around a particular location. So that is what you would use if you were trying to direct individuals through a particular area, or cars or people or anything. You can create a pathway of bollards to have those people head the direction you would like them to head. You may not even realize it when you're walking through a particular area where you are being directed. But we're in a good area where they've really spent time on that industrial engineering. It's a very, very easy thing to direct people that way. So hopefully that can help you. There is other options here, of course, you could have chosen. 16% say protected distribution would be what they would choose. This describes how your cables and wiring in your facility are protected. So that's a really good example of protected distribution. So instead of having the cables where you can see them going across the ceiling, we've seen places like this, right? You can protect them. You can put them in metal. You can protect them with plastic, but make it so that people can't go up and just attach to them or cut them or damage them in any way. You would want to protect the distribution through some type of means. That's what you would use, but has nothing to do with directing people into or out of a particular area. So we would not use protected distribution for that. Motion detection is a function commonly of a camera that can detect when motion goes by. Very commonly used for things like closed caption television or security cameras that you might have. Both of those sort of work together, but they have nothing to do with directing individuals. They might see when somebody walks through an area, but it's not directing them in any particular location. And then you've got industrial camouflage, which people in the chat room suspected I made up. as some, nope, that's a real thing. And I have seen this many, 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 many times. If you, for instance, find you go to a very large data center, if you go to maybe an enormous data center for a big company, maybe they have data centers all over the world. And when you get into this world of IT, you will visit a lot of data centers, I would bet. Being on the vendor side, I've been to hundreds of data centers around the world. And almost every time we go into one of these really big standalone data centers, you get there and they have to tell you exactly how to get there because there's no sign on the door. There's no sign on the building. You have no idea what's inside the building based on the front of it. And only after opening the door and going in do you realize this is a really secure facility. And suddenly you realize, oh no, this is an enormous data center. But there's a reason for that. They don't want to advertise the fact that they have all of their data in this building. It's an incredibly valuable facility. That data is very, very valuable. So industrial camouflage very often used to hide or be invisible or look like everything else around you. You know, that's a great way to do it. If you look at some of the vents, the air vents that are used, for example, in New York and other cities for their underground transit. So you've got trains and subways that run underground. There needs to be some type of air coming up. And they'll often build a building that looks just like the buildings around them. That's not really a building. It's really inside just a place for the air to go in and out. So industrial camouflage is very, very common to see and use that way. In this case, we were looking for a bollard as a way to protect or direct individuals through a particular area, and that would be the answer we were looking for here. Now, I realize we're at the top of the hour. I have more questions for you. I've just been talking the whole time, especially with the 601. So let's do another question from the slides, and then I have another one that I pulled from my practice exams. So we'll look at both of those. This next question on our list asks, which of these would provide management of both mobile and non-mobile devices? Would that be MDM, MAM, SNMP, UEM, and HSM? Those again are MDM, MAM, SNMP, UEM, and HSM. There's a lot there to work through. Let's see if we know which of these would provide management of both mobile and non-mobile devices. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We instead encourage you to follow the links on your screen and answer the question at ProfessorMesser.com/QA. You can also visit Vevox.app 146-042-530. You'll figure out what this one might be. Maybe you're familiar with these technologies and figuring out the details. This is one, I think, if you get into a lot of device management, you will certainly run into this one. Let's see how familiar you are with getting into these. This should be a good one if you're familiar with this. Yeah, getting a little close to the mic like they do on public radio. This is a question I think a lot of you have even worked with these technologies before. I don't want to give too much away. We'll talk more about what these technologies do in just a bit. But again, this is one of those where you have to know your abbreviations. But more than that, you have to know how these devices are used. Whenever we get into these kinds of questions and using abbreviations in the industry, we sometimes forget what the abbreviation means. After a while, you just keep saying SNMP. Set that machine up with SNMP. Is the SNMP agent turned on? Is the SNMP client working? Do we have, are we blocking SNMP in the firewall? You say SNMP so much that you almost forget there's words associated with those letters. And the point is you don't even remember what they are after a while. You just know what SNMP is. And then you have to really think, now, what was that has words, right? Simple Network Management Protocol. That's right. It's the Simple Network Management Protocol. But we never say that. And you certainly would not call someone and say, could we create a firewall rule to allow the Simple Network Management Protocol through? You would never do that. You would simply say, we need to enable SNMP. And everybody will know what you're talking about. So it is important to know what those words are, but perhaps for the purposes of the exam and for life, not critical. Although if you do know them, sometimes they do help with questions like this. So that's why I say it's useful to know the name, but not critical. It may help you on questions like this one. And being able to work through. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of these would provide management of both mobile and non-mobile devices? Is that MDM, MAM, SNMP, UEM, or HSM? Some of these we've talked about already. Let's see how we did. We have 37% that say it's an MDM. We have 35% that say it's a UEM. We have 11% each for a MAM and an SNMP. And we have 3% that say HSM. So I think some of us were thinking along those lines and trying to figure out the details and trying to find the right combination of these anyway. Hopefully it's one that you're familiar with. And if you were one of the folks that chose the Unified Endpoint Management, or a UEM, that's what we were looking for in this list. Hopefully it's one that you are familiar with because it's one that will manage both the mobile devices, which we've really gotten accustomed to by using mobile device management, but we certainly have other things that we need to manage, like our endpoints, like our desktops, like our laptops, and really understand the differences between all of them. When we're getting into mobility and having to do a little bit more with devices that use these device managers, we really want to be able to break this down and understand a little better. So hopefully this is one you've gotten a little more familiar with as we've stepped through all of these different devices that you might use and the different options available, is to really understand what the differences are between all of these. For example, 37% was the largest number of folks that answered a question. The plurality of you chose MDM. That's a mobile device manager. That's only for mobile devices. So it says both mobile and non-mobile devices in the question. Therefore, a mobile device manager would not provide management of both of those. We need something that has a larger scope than simply an MDM. And quite honestly, we really like the functionality of an MDM. Let's just extend it out a bit into something that was more universal. And that's where the UEM applies. That is the right answer. UEM is what we were hoping for. And that is the right question, where 35% of you answered these, being able to work through them. The goal with all of these questions and trying to understand what's available with these questions is, as many people are saying in the chat room, gosh, you have to read the questions. That is probably a good best practice on a certification exam, is to read the question. But as I even mentioned earlier, I've read through questions all the time and I've missed certain words and I've answered it wrong. So you're absolutely right. Even though we have to say it, no, you really have to read the questions. As it turns out, you do actually really have to read those questions. It becomes incredibly important. So unified endpoint management is what we were looking for here. If you're studying and working through these videos to get a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU, I would love to send you one via email. The way that you would receive this email is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You would click the Contact Us link. And in that Contact Us link page that comes up, you will put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put September 2023. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, please put our super secret code word of the month, UEM. UEM is our super secret code word of the month. And you can put anything else in that message you would like to. I read through every single one of these. I get a lot. I get hundreds of these every month, so I can't reply back to all of them, but I will certainly try to get as many back to you as possible. At least I will get all the answers. I'll get the CEU back to you, but I can't always reply to what's in the emails. UEM is our super secret code word of the month. You have to follow that specific set of processes and procedures to earn that email. You can't just send me an email out of the blue. You have to go to the Contact Us link on our website, go to the put in your name, your email address, in the subject line, put September 2023, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of UEM. The only ones we really didn't talk about in this list were the Mobile Applications Manager, which is really designed to provide you with a list of apps that you can use in this particular organization. It's really focused on mobile devices, so that would not apply to managing both mobile and non-mobile. We talked about HSM. We even talked about SNMP earlier, the Simple Network Management Protocol. So I think we covered all of these. We know a pretty good idea of what these different options are, and those would be the right answers and what we would be looking for unified endpoint management. And again, that is what we were looking for as the answer to this one. Well, I have another question for you. Again, please do not answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is a question that I want to bring up from, well, I'm bringing it up from here, from my from one of my practice exam books. Some of you may not even realize I have a practice exam book available. Let me show you what this looks like. If I can use my mouse pad here. My Security Plus practice exams were designed to give you a much better perspective of what to expect on the exam than perhaps some of these other exams that you might find available on the internet. That's really why I wrote this book, is I started looking at the practice exams that were out there. There are a number of practice exams out there that ask you content and questions that have nothing to do with the exam objectives. Maybe there's from older versions of the exam, which, by the way, you're not taking. You're taking the most current version of the exam. And a lot of times these questions are written in a way that don't make any sense, and they don't apply to the same feel that you will get on the exam. So I thought, what if you were able to write a set of practice exams that had a similar style, a similar voice to the actual exam questions, but they were original exams questions written in a way that could prepare you for your 601 exam. So that's what I did. I wrote a set of practice exams. So let's do one. This is from my practice exams book, and it says, a server administrator at a bank has noticed a decrease in the number of visitors to the bank's website. Additional research shows that users are being directed to a different IP address than the bank's web server. Which of the following would most likely describe this attack? Would it be disassociation, DDoS, buffer overflow, or DNS poisoning? Now, this is an option here that's in a PDF. All of my practice exams are in a PDF form. So one of the things you can do is annotate what's here. So if you see something that you want to make a comment on, or you want to highlight, or you think you know the answer, you can use your stylus, you can use your mouse, and you can write, so to speak, on this digital version of the practice exams book. You can also get the physical version of the book. It's exactly the same content, just in a physical printed form. It's big. It's like 380 pages. It's a big book, but everything is in here. 3 separate exams. There are 15 different performance-based questions in the book. You got a lot that you can roll through with these. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these topics. Also, you'll notice I'm on page 15. The answers are on page 33. And you may be looking at this and thinking, well, I got to scroll all the way to page 33 and then back again just to use this. Oh, no. It's a PDF. I can put links in it, and I did. So for this book, I can simply click the words quick answer and just find out, is it A, B, C, or D? Or I can click the details, which takes me to page 78 just by clicking. Whoop, there's page 78. So now I didn't have to scroll anywhere to do that. I just instantly went to the question, which is right here at the top again with the 4 different answers. And of course, I tell you what the answer is. And in this case, the answer is D, DNS poisoning. And I tell you why that's the right answer, which I think that's a useful thing to know. But the problem is, it would be better if you didn't even explain why it was the right answer, because if you got it right, you probably know why you got it right. I guess you could guess. But one of the things I really like about this book, and I think is important about this book, is that all of the wrong answers are explained. So if you answered DDoS, I explain why that's not the right answer. And I think more than anything, getting feedback when you get a question wrong is probably even more valuable as getting an understanding when you get the question right. I'll also tell you that you should go through and read all of these wrong answers, even if you get the question right, because the actual questions on your exam may be one of these topics like disassociation or DDoS or buffer overflow. So I'm giving you a little bit more details about this one. And if you don't even understand the question here, like the one we did earlier where people are wondering about syslog and I don't understand the question. I don't understand where this is coming from. I've got a QR code that takes you right to the video where this question was taken. So you can watch the actual video. Oh, that's what syslog does. Now I can go into this question with a little more knowledge of that particular topic. Those are my practice exams. They are available on my website at professormesser.com/securitype. You can get them together with the course notes, and there's a little bit of a discount. Some people were asking about discounts on the site, and there is a discount available if you get both of those at the same time. Find out more at professormesser.com/securitype. I forgot the link there. professormesser.com/securitype. Maybe that can help you with some of the things you need to learn for your exam. If you're trying to figure out where did all of these questions come from that are in this exam, you can learn about where these questions are from in the exam objectives themselves. These are free. Free is amazing value. I don't know if you're aware. They're on the CompTIA website. I have a link that takes you to the page on CompTIA. If you go to professormesser.com/objectives, you can also go to your favorite search engine and type CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to the page. And this lists everything you need to know for the exam. Everything. Everything is bulleted. It makes a fantastic checklist to see if you're really ready to go out and take your exam. And it's a great final checklist because you can go through everything that's here and get a better understanding of where you may want to spend your time. For example, here's the 601 objectives. Here's the list of detailed breakdown, everything you need to know. Everything. CompTIA does a great job at preparing you to take this exam. And it's a great checklist for those. There were a couple of people in the chat room were saying, I'm taking my exam next week. Well, before you do, grab the objectives, go through every bullet, and see if you can explain that topic to someone else or yourself. And if you think you can, check mark, you know that topic. If you can't, circle that one. You may want to come back and have a chat about that. That's at professormesser.com/objectives, absolutely free. And for those of you asking about the 701, we will talk about that in the after show in just a moment. I assure you, don't worry. You don't have to yell. We're good. I see you. Well, I used to see you. You're not here anymore. That's kind of how those things work. Well, don't worry. We do one of these study groups every month, though. I know we're not done. I got another hour to go through of questions you're going to give me, but don't worry. I've got a lot more to go through, and we do this every month. And, of course, you can go back and watch the replays or come back in October. Our next study group for Security Plus is October 26th. Notice October, I scrambled everything around. It's all greatly changed from where it used to be. So there's a lot going on there. Used to have different dates and different places. And that's a good thing to think about. An important thing to consider is before you are ready to join us on the live stream, check the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. I always update the calendar every time, instantly, whenever I need to make a change. So absolutely have a look at the calendar. And of course, you might be watching this months after October. So this will be a great place to know where the next live event is going to be. I always update them. Make sure you go to the website at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, I know I talked a lot in that first hour. We're a little bit late going to this. It's okay. We'll make it up. We'll make it up in the air, as the pilots say. Don't forget about following us on Twitter. I hear that's what they used to call it. And Instagram, I hear that's what they still call it, where we have our weekly Security Plus pop quiz questions and an archive of those, which is kind of nice too. We also have everything happening on YouTube. If you really like this video, you could do me a personal favor and give it a thumbs up. That would be phenomenal. I also, as we work through these, let you know that I have a lot that is coming onto YouTube in the next number of months. I think you can guess what that might be, so you might want to subscribe. Just telling you. That might help you quite a bit. Don't forget about our exam hacks ebook and the vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, you've got course notes and exams you can go through. It's all on my website. You can just follow the links at the top of the screen. I have menus there that will help you find those at professormesser.com/securitycn. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. There's too much of me on the screen there. Brings you to the end of another study group. Hopefully that's given you a perspective of things you need to know for the exam. But stick around for the after show. I'll be taking your questions from the chat room. There's a lot that we can go through about the 701. I'll give you my perspective of what I think it's going to turn into, and we'll kind of ease into that transition coming up shortly. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Okay, I'm going to take a sip. Hold on. No, there's no encores. We just don't stop. We just keep going. And that's kind of how we work through this. Tony in the chat room says, I passed the Security Plus 601 with a score of 782. Studied exactly the right amount with a little bit more to it, in fact. And even Tony says those practice exams are essential to passing. And I have to agree when you get into this of what this is. I would love it if you were also able to join us. I have questions that you're able to submit using Vevox. Vevox.app. There's the ID 146042530. If you're still in your Vevox front end, there's a tab in there to submit your questions. And I'll be taking questions there. Sometimes I see questions come in through the chat room, but when I'm focused on Vevox, it's sometimes hard to watch both of those at the same time. A number of you were kind of noticing I was kind of going back and forth, delete this in the chat, answer this on this screen, delete something else in the chat, answer it on this screen. So we're figuring it out. We're making this happen. And figuring out the details. There is a tab on the top of your Vevox app where you can submit questions here in the second hour, and I will be more than happy to answer those questions as we go along. So I need to, of course, bring up those questions here. So let's talk about this 701, because there were a number of questions that came up regarding the 701. So let's first talk about, somebody asked about exam vouchers. Vouchers have nothing to do with exam versions. Vouchers are for a specific exam. So if you buy a Security Plus voucher, that Security Plus voucher can be used for any Security Plus exam, whether it's an exam for the 601. Let's say you bought a voucher today. I bought a Security Plus voucher right now. I generally recommend you wait until you're ready to take the exam to buy a voucher. But let's say you're going to take it right now. And as you start looking at what's available, you think, well, maybe I'll take the 601. Maybe I don't have time right now. Maybe my studies don't start until November. Maybe I'll take the 701. Either way, you're fine, because that single voucher can be used to book a 601 exam. It can also be used to book a 701 exam. Doesn't matter. The only limiting factor to a voucher is its expiration date. You must take your exam before the end of that expiration date on the voucher. So usually that's a year. From the moment you buy the exam, you've got a year, and you must take your exam sometime in that year. That's why I tell people, don't buy your voucher until you're ready to take the exam, because if something comes up and you have to push it, you've got more time now. Some people will buy their vouchers at the beginning of their studies, and they're not really planning to take the exam until about 3 or 4 months later. Well, there's 3 or 4 months you sort of missed of time that you could have used rescheduling if something crazy comes up in your world. And I know that's probably not practical for most people, or it's not something you have to worry about for most people, but I'm just thinking about the idea of making that happen and having the right tools available. So that's really one of the best places to go. Once you buy your voucher, you use it for anything you'd like. Now, the other question that came up, and I'm going to sort of look through the Q&A that I have here, because you guys are just a lot of questions coming in. For Q&A, a lot of things that are coming through and breaking these down. So I want to also address some of these that you're going through and see if I can figure out where this might be. Since we're talking about vouchers, there were a number of people in the chat room and in here that were talking about where you would buy this if you were outside of the U.S. or Canada, because you'll notice the vouchers on my site are only good if you're in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory. So obviously, if you're outside of one of those particular countries, you'll need to find either a CompTIA partner that's in your particular country, or you'll need to buy it directly from CompTIA. So there may not be an option or a good option for you. We'll have to find out. Sometimes you can find a discount code that you can use on the CompTIA website. Usually not for very much, but it might get you something on there. But that might help you as you work through those. The question about the 701 and which one is better or worse. First, as we talk about this, so everyone is clear, there is no such thing as a 701 right now. Doesn't exist. Until the exam is released, I think you should go from the perspective of it does not exist, because it doesn't. A number of people even asked me today, I'm going to take my 701 exam next week. Where can I get a voucher for this? And I have to tell them, you're not going to take the 701 next week. It's not going to be available for you. You're going to take it in November, maybe, if you wait that long. But you might be better off, especially taking the exam and working through, I don't know, the things that are important for you, like getting the cert right now. Maybe the 601 is a better choice. Plus, how are you taking the 701 exam when there are no study materials out for the 701 exam? You can't just take the 601 or study for 601 and go in and take the 701. You're going to fail. No question. It's so different. The exams are remarkably different. There's some similarities, but there's more non-similarities. More topics are new on the 701 than not. So that's an important consideration. You will be able to take your 601 exam until July of 2024. So if you're working on your 601 right now, you've been studying your 601 for months, you're worried that November is coming up, don't worry. Doesn't matter to you. Doesn't apply to you. Because whether you take the 601 exam or the 701 exam, you earn exactly the same Security Plus certification. There's no tag on your cert that says, I got my Security Plus, but it was the 701. Or I got my Security Plus, but it was the 601. Doesn't work that way. Once you earn your Security Plus, you're Security Plus certified. You probably will never take the exam again. After 3 years, you'll just renew your cert. There are people who are Security Plus certified today that took the 301 exam, and they've simply renewed every 3 years. And their Security Plus certification is just as valid as somebody who passed the 601 or the 701. In fact, it's identical for the 601 and 701. So once we get to the point where the 701 is released and available, you will need to make a decision on whether that's really going to be the best certification for you. You may find, and this is what happens every time there's a new version, you're going to see that the exam was released and you'll say, I'll go buy a book. And you go to Amazon and there's no books. There's no books on the Amazon. There's nothing. There's maybe one from somebody you've never heard of before. That's because it takes time for the study materials to be released. Now, if you come to ProfessorMesser.com, there will be videos on day one. There will be other content on day. There will be lots of 701 on day one on my website because I'm nimble. I'm fast. I don't know. I'm getting it done. I'm getting no sleep is what happens, to be quite honest. But we're pushing and pushing and pushing to get these available to you on day one, or as much as we possibly can on day one. So, and it's going extremely well. I'm so happy with the content process that we have going on right now. We're going to have so much available for you on day one, but that's just my content. Maybe you want to go get content from somewhere else. You may not be able to find it. So it may take a number of months to finally see information come out to the market from other locations that finally make it so that you might be comfortable taking the 701 exam. Okay, so some of you may not care about that. You want to get a CompTIA book, you want to watch my videos, you want to go through that, and then you want to take the 701 exam. So there you go. That's one of those that I think is important to consider. Now, the 601 exam objectives and the 701 exam objectives are both available on the CompTIA website right now. Even though the exam is not available, the exam objectives are available, and you can download them right now, and you can compare them and see what the differences are. Now, while we're talking about that, I'm going to bring up my comparison of those two just so you get some perspective of what these I'm going to give you broad perspective of what these differences might be for the Security Plus 601 versus the 701. So what I have done is I've listed out every exam objective for the 601. I've listed out every exam objective for the 701, and I've matched them. And I know which ones are new. I know which ones are still in the exam, and therefore I know which ones have been dropped. And so I have compiled a set of statistics that compares those two exams. I don't think this should change your mind about which exam you take, because these very broad numbers don't describe what you're actually learning on these certifications. So I'll give you a perspective anyway. So on the 601, if you were to count up every objective on the exam objectives, there are 1,038 objectives on the 601. It's a lot of objectives. Let's just round number it and just say there's 1,000. There's 1,000 objectives on the 601 exam. That's every one of those bullets I counted. So every bullet, and broadly, every single one of those bullets I counted. So generally, it's about 1,000 objectives. The 701 exam has 662 objectives. That's very different. That is a difference. It's 36% smaller, if you want to look at it that way. Now, I have had other people tell me you shouldn't look at objectives that way. You shouldn't count them that way. You can't take every objective and think that it's just as weighty as every other objective. Well, you are correct there. But this is just a broad perspective, and I think it does tell a story, and I think it's a pretty accurate story, having created a 701 course already, just haven't seen it yet. 36% smaller is significantly smaller. So it is less numbers of things that you have to know for this exam. And we'll talk more in other study groups about what those things might be. We still have a lot of time before 701 comes out. So the details of what's different doesn't really matter that much today, but we will talk about the differences as we get there. Now, if you started going through that list and you think, what's new? How much of the 701 is really new? Could I study 601? Are they just getting rid of 30%? And maybe I just overstudied 30%, but I really studied the 70% that are on the 701? Nope. No, it is not. Because if you were to compare those objectives, 51% of the 701 exam contains objectives that are not found in the 601. Let's just round it down to 50%. Half of the 701 exam is brand new content. Half of it. That's a large number. Generally, when there's an update to an exam, CompTIA tends to update 20 to 30%. But in this case, they're updating half of this exam. So half of the 701 exam is all brand new. So that's why I tell people all the time how important it is for you to study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. It's also why it's so important that if you're studying for the 601, keep studying. Because even though it seems like it's 30% more content, it's really not that much. It really is because everything sort of builds on each other in the Security Plus. So it seems like it's a 30%, but I guess it feels more like 15, if I can put it that way. Don't think that because it's so much of a difference in number of objectives that you might want to go either way. I will also warn you that if you are waiting to take this exam, the people that are applying to the same jobs you are, they're already getting their cert. So you're already behind if you're waiting. There's a cost to waiting, and you need to understand what that cost is. So yes, there may be some advantages to waiting. There are also some significant disadvantages to waiting. I'm not going to tell you to go either direction. Both of these are perfectly good exams. Both of these contain information that applies today. None of it's outdated. All of this is all up to date. Security doesn't change that quickly. So I would tell you, if you're studying for the 601, keep studying for the 601 because that's the exam that's currently available. Some of you, if you started studying now, you could be certified before the 701 is even released because it's a month and a half away. Some people study really quick. So if you're one of those people that can really study it up and get it done really quickly, keep going with your 601 stuff right now because you can just be finished and be done. And again, remember, if you're waiting, you may have the exam come out and then you're still looking around wondering, where's all the books? I'm still waiting. And then 3 months after that, you're still waiting. We already got our cert a long time ago. We already got the job. We're already getting paid, and you're still waiting to get your cert. Don't be that person. Don't be in that one. So you need to decide yourself which one is the best for you, but just be aware that waiting is not always an upside. Waiting can be a significant downside, and you need to take that into account. Hopefully that'll give you some perspective of that one. Let's go through some other questions. If you have other questions that you want me to answer about the 601 and 701 and what those differences might be, you can leave a question on Vevox. go to vevox.app. The ID is 146-042-530. And you can submit your questions right there in the Vevox app. And I will be sifting through those right now. And I will be going through the list of what you've put in here. And we'll kind of answer some of these and how it works. Let's talk about the exam process. Here's a follow-up. Before we go to that, I want to go to the question about earplugs for those of you that asked that one. Let's talk about this one first because I think it's a good follow-up to this exam. Oh, what did I do with that one? Did I just send it to the wrong place? I did. Let's publish this one so you can see the same thing that I see. And the question is from Cassandra, who says, okay, so 50% of the material is not changing for the 701. 50% of the material on the 701 is new from the 601. I know there's a little bit of wordplay there, but it's important that you understand the distinction between those two. 50% of the 701 exam is not covered on the 601, just so you're aware. Would there be any value in passing the 601 and then taking the 701? Well, if sleep is not important to you, I guess that's the value. No, there's really no value in passing the 601 and then taking the 701. Once you pass the 601, you're Security Plus certified. Once you pass the 701, you're Security Plus certified. It's the same thing. It's the same end game. It's just two paths that get you exactly to the same exact point in time with exactly the same certification. So when you're looking at one of these, you take one or the other. You take the 601 and you pass it and you earn your Security Plus, or you take the 701 and you pass it and you earn your Security Plus. It's the same thing, same end game. So there really is not any value in taking both of these. I guess if you were someone, you're the one, you don't follow the main quest, you like the side quest, and you can't finish that main quest until you finished up all the little side quests on the end, you're a completionist. By the way, we're the same people. Well, I'm also a completionist. You're one of those people who says, well, I took the 601, but there's still that 701 out there. I want the satisfaction of passing that one too. You can do that. You can absolutely do that. I would recommend, though, if you're going to do that, that you take the 601, pass it, and earn your Security Plus. Then you wait 3 years until the 701 is starting to be retired, and you take the 701 then, because then that renews your certification another 3 years. See? What's interesting about the way that CompTIA does it, though, is what I just told you to do is sort of pointless, because what actually happens is you take the 601 and you're certified for 3 years. Then you take the 701 because they do allow you to take the exam again if it's a different version of the exam. So you can once you pass the 601, you can't take the 601 again, but you can take the 701. So you could literally take the 601 on one day. You're now Security Plus for 3 years. You are certified. You take the 701 the next day, you've just renewed your certification. So your certification now is effectively good for 6 years. So there is some benefit to taking the 701 right after the 601. That's the only value I can give you is that one. I think, though, if you go through the 601 and you take your exam, I think you'll be just tired of it at that point. I think you'll be over it, that you don't want to take the 701. Or you may, like me, you may be a completionist, and you may want to do that. For the folks asking in the chat room, am I going to have a 701 course? Oh, yes. It's 121 videos long. All but 25 videos have been shot at this point. They are all ready for you to see and use, but you can't see them yet because the exam's not out. So, yes, there will be course notes, there will be practice exams, and more coming later in the year, or next year, 2024, calendar year, over the next 12 months, say it that way. So that's plenty to go through. I think that will really help if you're trying to figure it out. But yeah, I will have, of course, and this doesn't change. I will still have my free videos. I will still have everything out there. Absolutely. That is something you can do. So maybe you can work through understanding the details of what you need to do to renew and all of those other things, but you can absolutely do that. So maybe that's something you can work on. Let's do some more questions. Other questions that you are sending in to me via Vevox. So let's see if we can answer. Since we're talking about certs, I do want to come back to that one that was asked earlier about earplugs, just so we're familiar and knowing what's there. This question is kind of similar to this. JP asks, if you renew your Security Plus, or I would say if you earned a Security Plus, regardless of which one it is, does it also renew your A Plus and Network Plus, or do those have to be renewed individually? Well, fortunately, if you have an A Plus already and you have a Network Plus already, if you look at the CompTIA website, they actually have a chart that shows the hierarchy of this. If you pass your Security Plus, it automatically renews your A Plus and Network Plus to the day that you pass that Security Plus. So yes, it does renew your A Plus and Network Plus. They do not need to be renewed individually. You always renew the highest level cert you earn, and then everything else underneath that is automatically renewed with it. That's kind of nice, right? So that's good. And if you're coming up on time to renew your A Plus or renew your Network Plus, just go pass your Security Plus exam and you've just renewed them. Ta-da, all done. And they have a nice chart on their website of what renews what. So you can go through that list and see exactly what's there. Pretty useful. Other questions from the chat room, they ask, will I continue to support the 601 since the 701 is out? Oh, absolutely. Everything will still be there. If you're taking the 601, all the study materials will be available to watch. I never ever get rid of videos. So if you go out to my YouTube channel, there's a playlist for the 401 Security Plus. Please don't watch it. It's awful. You don't want that. So that one's not going to help you very much. But I think it's important to keep those out there. I think sometimes there's topics in those that can be super useful. And so I don't get rid of any of the old videos. They're always on YouTube. They will always be on YouTube unless something really bad changes. I don't know what YouTube's going to do next. But they've been great so far. And I really tell them that's what I want to do, is have these videos available on YouTube. And they've been great. In fact, we might do some interesting things with these videos coming up, because YouTube is doing some interesting things with education. I don't think you've seen it yet. They've shown it to me. And they're doing amazing things. So there will be some additional features available. So not only will the course remain free, it'll remain completely available on YouTube. You can watch it at any time. There's still no registration. Nothing changes. Fully supported. And the 601 will remain that way as well. And you will still continue to be able to get course notes and practice exams and everything else. The Success Bundle will still be there up until the day the 601 retires. And of course, at that point, I remove them from the website, because who's going to buy? You shouldn't be buying old material. So those get removed right after that. But up to that point, yeah, you might want to use those. Might be a good thing. So absolutely, I will continue to support those and figuring out those. More questions about these. This is one from the chat, and I promise we will keep saying we'll come back to that one too, right? Salam asks, can I renew my Security Plus with a Microsoft certificate? Interestingly enough, maybe to some degree you might be able to. So you need to go over to the CompTIA website. On the CompTIA website, there is a section for renewal, and we're going to all walk through it together. Here's this fella. I've got a continuing education section of the website, and they talk about how to renew. We can do different things. You can renew with a single activity. That's not necessarily what we're looking at. Renew with multiple activities. And the multiple activities are earn with another CompTIA certification, like Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, or earn non-CompTIA IT industry certifications. And those would be these certifications. They're certainly CompTIA, but let's click down further. Let's say you're getting a Security Plus and you want to renew. So here is what renews the SY0-601 Security Plus and what is required for renewal. You need 50 CEUs, and here's all these third-party certifications that can help. I'm going to choose Microsoft, and notice the number of CEUs that are applied from these Microsoft certs are not 50. So if you were to pass the Microsoft 365 Certified Enterprise Administrator Expert certification, you would earn 38 CEUs. So you would still need another 12 to renew your certification. But that would get you a long way beyond this. That would give you a lot. You get really close with the Cybersecurity Architect Expert. 45 is what you get. But notice none of those are 50. Maybe that's by design. I don't know what the deal is with that. But hopefully that would be very clear for what you need. So that's where you not only know now how many CEUs you need, you know that you can get them from a source other than CompTIA if you want. I think a lot of people just simply do the CertMaster CE, where you simply take an online training program, answer the questions, and in a couple of days you're recertified. You've got a renewal. That's CertMaster CE does that. And that's pretty nice. That's incredibly useful. It's a nice thing to do. It's easy. You don't have to count CEUs. You don't have to submit CEUs, and you don't have to pay to submit CEUs. There's a maintenance fee if you're using CEUs to renew. And so if you want to avoid the maintenance fee, you can take a CompTIA exam to renew, or you can take the CertMaster CE to renew, both of those. They're all on the CompTIA website. The CE is absolutely there on the CompTIA website. You'll find it. Just look for CertMaster CE for the renewal part, and they got a big section on that. And I think the three that can be renewed that way are A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus currently. Those are the three. Let's keep going with questions that we have here. I have a hard stop at 2, so I want to get through as many as I can to be able to do that. Let's have a look at the others that you have here. Some of these that you are bringing in, I mean, we have a lot here of people that have put questions in. So there's a lot on this list. So I apologize for me having to read through all of this and figure out the details, but we'll get it. We'll get it there. Burr Warrior in the chat room just bought my $90 bundle. Thank you, Burr. Burr? Is that your first name or last name? Mr. Burr? Mr. Burr Warrior? Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate that as well. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it too. I think that's the win-win from my perspective is all the videos are free. You can watch the entire course for free. You pay nothing for that course. And then if you need additional tools and things you might want to use, they're on the website. You may want to take advantage of that. This one comes up quite a bit. And I think we should talk about this one just a little bit. Well, this one is the one I want to talk about, but it doesn't quite fit. So the question is from Arsh, who says, hey, taking the Security Plus an hour after we're done here. You're right there. This was your final check, wasn't it? Do you have any quick tips? Well, not particularly. My tip generally is before you go into the exam, my number one tip is for you to go through the exam objectives with a fine-tooth comb and go through every single objective and mark whether you think you know that objective well enough for the exam or circle that you do not know it well enough for the exam. And then you go back to that list and you study everything you circled. With an hour to go, that's probably not very practical. That's not going to help you. So I don't think that's what you're going to be able to use. So I would recommend that with an hour left, maybe scan it, see if there's particular topics that jump out at you, and maybe at least get a couple of them down before walking into the exam. I think that's probably the best way to do it. I know it seems like the chat room, Liquid saying, well, how can you, there's 1,000 objectives. How can you even hope to memorize 1,000 things? Well, you know a lot more than 1,000 things already. You know a lot more than what's on the Security Plus exam. You know millions of things. Your brain is incredible in what it can remember. And you will be surprised once you go through these objectives. You'll get halfway through and think, I'm already halfway through this thing. What's 500 objectives? So it's a good example of how it looks big. It looks like it's a monster thing, but in reality, many of those objectives are within the same category of devices or attack types, those types of things. So it tends to blend together and have very much similarities between the topics. So we've been doing it for 3 years. We've been working on the 601 exam and that version of the objectives for 3 years, and people have done great. So it's big. Yes. It is a complex certification. Yes, it is. Every industry certification is difficult, but it is one that you can absolutely pass. People have been crushing it for 3 years now. So I would recommend. Christian in the chat room says, I'm planning to take the exam soon. Should I worry that it will change to the 701 before I can take it? The 601 is still around for many months. It doesn't go away until July. You have until summer of next year to pass your 601 exam. So not a concern, not an issue. Do not worry. It's not going to catch up to you. It's not going to be a certain time. You will be fine. And I think that's a good consideration too. If you're someone who is worried about dates, just go out to the CompTIA website, go see what they've listed as the dates, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable with this. I think a lot of people don't realize there's that overlap, and the overlap is so valuable because you don't want to worry about those pieces of it. Along those same lines, sort of have opened up a whole bunch of things here, a whole mess of stuff. Javert says, maybe you already answered this, but will I be able to renew my 601 cert that I just received this year since the 701's coming out soon? Well, here's the answer. You don't have a 601 cert. You don't. You're just Security Plus certified. How you got certified doesn't matter. What version of the exam you took to get certified effectively doesn't matter. Now, it matters for certain things. We'll talk about caveats to this, but generally speaking, doesn't matter which exam you took. You could have taken the 301 and simply renewed it every 3 years, and you'd still be Security Plus certified right now. So they could change now that you are certified, they could change the exam every day. Today's the 701, tomorrow's the 801, day after that's the 901, then the 1001, then the 1101. Then they could do it every day if they wanted to. Now that would make my life a little difficult, but they could do that. But since you're already certified, it doesn't matter what they do to the exam. They could make changes galore into the exam process. You don't care because you are already certified. And that's another benefit of having the certification in your pocket, is that you don't have to worry about that. So I think that's an important consideration too. You do have to pick the right things because you need to make sure you only study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. Let me say that again. That's how important this is. You should only study from materials that have been specifically written for the exam version that you're planning to take. That is so incredibly important because you do not want to study from 601 materials and go walk into the 701 exam. You're going to fail because half the exam is new. Half the exam will be things you've never seen before. I promise you. And you can go look at it and work through those. So I think that's probably the thing that I would highly recommend is you stick to materials that match. But from the perspective of renewing, doesn't matter what CompTIA does with the renewals. You are already certified. You don't have to worry about it. Now let's go back to that question that I kept saying I was going to fall back to and talk about and break down to see where. Now I have to find it. There it is. And I think this is a good one because this comes up a bit, and I'm with you. This is from Anon Nemus, who says, will the exam center let me wear earplugs? In some cases, the exam center will give you earplugs. It is a common thing to see in many exam centers. It's not guaranteed, and it's not required by the exam center. They will very often certainly allow you to wear earplugs. They want to see them. It's kind of hard to do anything wrong with earplugs. You have a pair of foam earplugs, just stick them in. Now, headphones, that might be different. They may not let you do that. You can't just wear noise-canceling headphones because they could be telling you something. It could be telling you the exam is going to ask you about this, and you should put this. They're not going to want you to do that. Plus, you could also have a recording system in there. But foam earplugs that go in your ear, I would be sure they'd allow it. You would need to take them to the exam center when you go and say, hey, can I wear these? And they'll tell you right then, yes or no. And you're more than welcome to call them before you go and ask, hey, I'm taking the exam there next week. Can I bring foam earplugs? And they'll tell you whether they allow them or not. That's probably one of the best ways. And as I mentioned, some exam centers know that there's noise around, and they find that people do better on the exam if they can shut the noise out. So often you'll sit down at your testing table or at your testing chair with the monitor in front of you, and there's a pair of earplugs right there. So that's kind of nice. They have already thought of it. And it's certainly acceptable. It happens all the time. People ask for exam earplugs. It's sort of normal. So yes, absolutely you can do that. They are very useful. I highly recommend using them if you can. I've been in a number of exam centers. They're all loud, in my opinion. I'm very sensitive to noise. I can, if I walk into a place and there's music playing, I immediately notice the music and I'm thinking, oh, that's 80s today. We're doing the 80s songs. And Mrs. Professor Messer goes, I didn't even hear the music. How are you paying attention to that? I go, I can hear it. I hear everything. But that's in an exam center. I'm absolutely putting some foam earplugs in. Helps me quite a bit. I do it all the time. On a plane, putting the earplugs in. Not sleeping. I can sleep without earplugs. But exam centers, I tend to put earplugs in because I want to focus on what's in front of me. It's hard enough to focus anyway. So absolutely, I'll use this if I can. Other questions. This is one, and this still applies, by the way, to the current version of the exam. Anna asks, sorry, it's been answered before. Can we take the exam remotely? Yes, you can. Now, do you want to take the exam remotely? Maybe or maybe not. I think that's a fine question. But just about at the beginning of 2020, there was something going on. What was going on? Does anybody know what was going on in 2020? Oh, that's right. We were confined to quarters. And when that happened, CompTIA had already been working on a plan to allow for remote exams. And all that really happened is they sped up their plans and were able, in just about a month, it was remarkable what they were able to do. They were able to push out those plans so that people could take their exam online. Now, this means that your location of where you're taking this exam needs to be a secure location. Can't take it at a Starbucks. You have to be in a room, ideally a room that you can close in, has a door, nobody can walk through, nobody can be in the room when you're taking the exam. The exam setup has to be a certain setup on your desk. There's quite a bit that goes into taking an exam remotely because they want the remote experience to be just as secure as taking the exam in a testing center. Now, because of that, the software that runs on your system tends to take over your computer, and that can sometimes create technical problems. There's also a number of problems if you're on a network that is heavily firewalled. It may not work properly either. There is a testing process you can go through prior to booking your exam to test your specific network connection to confirm that it works with this remote access system. However, I will tell you, and those of you that have watched my exam Q&A and have been on study groups and have heard me talk about this, is I still think going to a testing center is by far a much more seamless and uneventful experience. There are a lot of things that can go wrong in your home. For example, there's plenty of people, if you go out to the CompTIA subreddit and read through some people's experience, there's plenty of examples where somebody was in a room taking their exam and somebody who lived with them opened the door, walked behind them, and went to the other room. And at that point, their exam was terminated and whatever they had scored is what they scored. If they had just started their exam, they just failed. And they just lost all the money they spent on taking that exam. They just failed it. It was just pulled. They were done. If a dog comes up and barks, your exam, they'll pull it. You're done. If there have been cases where somebody's dropped something on the floor, they think something on the floor, and they come out of this, let me just pick that up. And then by the time they get back up, the exam's been, what? They just revoked my exam. Well, yeah, because you moved out of the way of the camera. What were you doing down there? Were you writing on something? Were you looking at a book? So that's why. It's all an anti-cheat type thing. So that's why that's the thing. They only allow one monitor. So this won't work. If you're in here, this is not going to work to take your exam. They will never allow me to take the exam in here. Not going to happen. So there's also a lot of things you have to set up on your desk and things that you have to get ready on your desk. You have to take pictures before the exam starts. You have to submit those pictures through the app. So there's quite a bit that you have to worry about. And I have heard cases, it's gotten a little better lately. Maybe they've been doing a better job of training. But there have been cases where people have just simply, instead of there's a camera and they've been looking here, or they get a question, they do this. What is the answer to that? And the message will pop up on the screen. Do not take your eyes off the screen or we will terminate your exam. Like, brother, what's going on? Well, maybe there's something on the ceiling. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know. But there's more things that can go wrong taking your exam remotely than if you're at a testing center where none of those issues happen. Now, that doesn't mean that taking your exam at home won't be a fine experience. There have been plenty of people who've taken their exams at home and it's worked out just fine. No problems at all. And they'll even tell you, no, I had no problem. It was great. Took the exam. No one complained. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't argue with me. But then again, that person probably wasn't putting their hand in front of their face, which is not allowed. They probably weren't saying the question out loud. Sorry if it's been answered before. Can we take the exam? Revoked. They don't like that. They get a warning or you get a revoked. You can't talk. You can't eat. You can't do anything. So just because you're at home doesn't mean you can do those things. If you get up because somebody comes to the door, your exam is revoked. So this is one of those situations where you have to be very particular to the rules because they certainly are. So I would highly recommend if you're planning to take it at home that you read through the rules. Sometimes taking it at home is the best choice. Maybe you live an hour away from the testing center. Well, just take it at home, but just read through other people's experiences and read through the rules very, very well. And if you do those two things, you'll know what to expect and you'll be ready for it on exam day. It's not going to be a surprise and you won't suddenly be wondering, wait, I was just talking to myself. Yeah, you can't do that. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I said read the rules and look at what other people said. Once you do that, though, I think you'll be all right. I think it'll be fine. So that's my recommendation anyway. I've got time for another question. Let's get another one in here. Let's see. Other things. Tony says, I was offered earplugs, didn't use them since my room was quiet. You had 6 students taking exams at the same time, and you said they were very respectful. And I think that's great. I was taking an exam one time at a testing center, and I'm not sure what exam they were taking. It was not a CompTIA exam. And the entire time, I can't do it here, they were just on their keyboard typing. The whole time. I'm here trying to do subnetting, and they are going to town. They are typing. There was a story, and they were writing something, and they were, oh, good, they're done. Finally, I can work out. Oh, there they go again. They're typing it. Like the whole time, they were typing the whole time. I had no idea what this exam had to be. Are they writing a survey? Are they angry about something? I didn't know. They were just typing. But that's another time when maybe the testing center wasn't the right place to be at that time. But earplugs would have absolutely helped me in that scenario. So Tony has good feedback, though. They're not always that way. I'm always thinking worst case. But sometimes you get some good people in the room. They're not going to be a big problem for you. Other questions. I can fit one more in. I know we're at the top of the hour. Quite literally, Mrs. Professor Messer has me on a tight schedule today. So I will get another one of these in before we're going. Here's a good one. And I think this is a question I see all the time. And I kind of worry sometimes about what people are doing with these. So this is from Noah. It's a very common question, and it's certainly worth talking about. The question is, I have never gotten any certifications or worked in tech before. Am I making a mistake going straight for the Security Plus? You are not making a mistake. Or, yes, you are making a mistake. Could be either one, actually. There you go. I'm glad we were able to do that. No, here's the reasoning behind this. The issue is not what you're trying to work towards. It's not what certification am I taking. It's what are you going to do with that certification once you earn it. That's where the value is. Value is not in taking the cert and passing it. That's more of a personal challenge. Once you get it, what do you plan to do with it? Because the certification itself is not the end. It is the means to the end. You should be working to get a job or get a better job. That's what most people do with these certs. Doesn't mean that's what everyone does, but many people, that's what they're shooting towards. They're trying to get a job or they're trying to get a better job in IT. And so what I commonly tell people is, what job are you working towards? That's your first step. So before you even look at certs, what do you want that job to be? Do you need an entry-level job in IT? In Noah's case, I believe he does. He's never worked in tech before. You need an entry-level job in IT. What jobs would that be? It might be entry-level. It might be a field service technician. It might be a help desk technician. It might be a hardware break fix kind of tech. It might be someone who works kind of triage in a network operations center or a security operations center. There might be quite a bit there that would be an entry-level job in IT. So what you need to do is go find the jobs, the entry-level jobs in IT in your area or the place where you would like to work. And you can find those on any of the big job posting sites. Go to LinkedIn Jobs, go to Indeed, go to Dice, go to wherever it is in your country or in your geography where people have jobs that are posted. Look for the entry-level jobs in your area. What do they want you to have? Do they want you to have A+? Do they want you to have Security Plus? Do they want you to have a Network Plus? Do they want you to have a Microsoft certification? Do they want you to have a Cisco certification? Do they want you to have an Amazon certification? I don't know. Every territory, every company, every geography is a little bit different. And if you are working, for example, in the Washington, D.C. area, that D.C., Baltimore, Virginia area, all of those companies up there have a very big focus on Security Plus because Security Plus is the entry-level certification for Department of Defense positions. And really most of the organizations there sort of focus on federal government. Having Security Plus is often what they are asking for. Now, if you look at jobs in Chicago or Minnesota, go to Minneapolis, go to LA, go to Dallas, look at the jobs in those areas, their requirements will be quite different because they have a different set of objectives for people doing those jobs. So you may find in Dallas, more people are asking for A+. So it really depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. So go see what jobs are out there, find out what those jobs are asking for, and then you can make a better decision about which certification would apply for what you're trying to do. And I mentioned this. I have a video. It's connected. It's in the YouTube video description of this video. If you go and look at that, there is a link there to how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about this process. And there I go a little bit further. I tell you to make a spreadsheet. You document every job in your area that you think applies to you. You figure out what type of formal education they want you to have. You find out what type of industry certifications they want you to have. You make a list of all of the other things that they would like you to know about. And you start compiling this information. And once you get through 10 or 15 of these, you've got a pretty nice database of where employers in your area would like you to focus your efforts. And you will find a lot of similarities. Maybe one is asking for something a little different than anyone else, but you may notice that 7 of them all want you to get an A+. Or maybe you find out that 9 of them want you to get a Security Plus. That's when you really start realizing what's the value in me getting that cert. And that answers the question of saying, are you making a mistake getting your Security Plus? Maybe you are, but then again, maybe you're not. But the only way you can answer that question is to do the hard work, is to start compiling the data. I can't answer that question for you. I have no idea what type of situation you're in, what type of jobs are in your area, or what the employers in your area are doing with that. So I think that's the important part, is you focus on what other people would like you to have. You get your foot in the door, and then you work up to where you would like to be. That's a very common path. You're not going to start as a high-level security analyst right out of the gate. It takes years to learn what you need to know to finally get to that level. But you might get an entry level into a SOC, Security Operations Center, in your particular area. That's a good entry-level position. And maybe they want you to have a Security Plus. There's your connection right there. Work for that job. But you also need to look at all the other jobs in your area and see what they might want as well. It's all about the numbers. It's all about the statistics and what makes sense for you and what you want to do in your career. And sometimes you have to take a path you didn't think you would be taking to finally get to the end point that you're working towards. And fortunately, IT allows you to do that. IT allows you to start in one place, and then your abilities and the things you learn allow you to move into other areas of IT as time goes on. I didn't start in security. I started as a field service tech. Actually, I started before that as a mainframe operator, working the bad hours. then I worked up to a field service tech. Then from there, I worked up to be in a help desk, corporate help desk. So the job that a lot of people are starting at, I had to level up twice before I ever got to that job. That was my third job, was corporate help desk. And it might be for you too. It's amazing though what you learn in jobs like that. I loved field service. I really did. You meet great people. It's fun to go somewhere different every day. It's not incredibly difficult once you learn sort of the details of installing memory and replacing hard drives and installing an SSD and all those things. It's kind of fun, but you learn as you go. And if you get to a point where you know everything you need to know, it's time for you to move up to a new job. IT lets you do that. So even if you're not starting on security today, and after hearing this, maybe you realize, maybe I should be working on my A+. That's fine. Go work on your A+, because that's going to give you the best chance of getting that job or better job. And then eventually you're going to get to the Security Plus. You will work yourself up if that's what you're interested in doing. My path kind of went through desktop administration and then network administration, and then finally the network protocols and network management. And then I used all of that to move into security. So I think that's what you need today for your best chance to get into a world of security. Is you need to know operating systems, you need to know hardware, you need to know networking. Well, you need to learn that first, then you'll have a pretty good chance at a security engineering or security analyst job and work it through there. But it's a pathway. You can get there. You can start as a help desk, as a desktop administration assistant. And eventually you're going to work up to be high-level systems engineering on the security side. And I know this because that's what I did. It's out there and it's available. You just have to be ready to go after it. And that's one of the things that IT is very good at, is if you are motivated, you work hard to learn these topics, you spend time understanding the industry, you do fun things with technology and become more familiar with these different technologies, you can go anywhere you want and do whatever you want. That's not that way with other places. You can't do that in medicine. You can't do that biology. Can't do that. Can't really do that in education either. But IT, you can go do whatever you want. If you think what you're doing, you got into networking, you think, I don't like this networking so much, go do databases, go do cloud, go do security. You can do that. That's really, in my mind, one of the biggest advantages to this particular market of IT. It is one that gives you the flexibility to find the job with the right things to know and the right benefits and pretty darn good pay. And I think that's a pretty good combination. You just need to find the right balance of all of those things that work for you. Hopefully that gives you some perspective. Well, I think that is a good place to put a bow on the top and say we made it through another one of our Security Plus study groups. Can you believe it? I want to thank everyone for being here. We have such a good time on these live streams. Don't forget about our Discord. We have a great folks over there in our community. If you want to contact me after hours and when we're not on a live stream, I'm usually in there. Of course, you can always send me a contact us on the website. There's always something new going on. Come on back next month. We've got 2 more A+ study groups. We've got a Network Plus study group and, of course, another Security Plus study group at the end of October. We would love for you to come back. Join us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord or use the link on our website. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thank you, everyone.